Hey friends, I am Cassie Nolan.
And hello, everyone. I am Cynthia Fantasia, and I am Cassie's mentor. Cassie is my friend and my mentee, and we just want to share a little bit about our relationship and about mentoring.
Yeah, because I think mentoring can be a really, um, it can be a really touchy topic in the sense of there's this frustration of how do you find a mentor and what does the process look like. So we just want to share what it's looked like for us in ways that you can hopefully replicate this and be with the person that God has intended for you to be mentored by or to mentor someone else. I think the most important thing to mention here is we've been chatting about this and thinking about what we wanted to talk about today. And, this process was not a fast process. And we love when things are quick and easy and just happen right away. But that was not the case as far as our story of doing things. And there was a lot that happened in my heart long before we even met. And I will say I was praying over finding a mentor for almost 2 years by the time that Cynthia and I had met. And it started very generic of just, praying for someone that would be from my church. That was my first thing, is that my husband and I had moved churches and we were at Grace Chapel. And I was like, oh, Lord, I really want to find a mentor from Grace. I really want to be able to just grow some roots here, and that would be perfect. And over time, my list got a bit more elaborate. And it was so funny because I will say my reverse spiritual gift is bitterness and pettiness. I know it is, and I joke about it all the time, but I was definitely getting frustrated, I think, with God, that it had been a year and then a year and a half, and like no one was a good fit. Nobody that I met, I was like, it just didn't work. So I started to get a bit more specific, and I am sure there was a little cynical part of me that was seeing like, all right, God, can you actually check off all the things on this list? But they were also things that he had placed in my heart that I wanted to grow in. So I like made this mental list. I had the original from Grace Chapel, mature Christian, those things. And then it turned into someone who has been through the book publishing process, somebody who understands like living with a chronic illness as I do. And, there were just so many things. And I had no idea when I was at my first By Design Ministry retreat that within 24 hours of being there, God was going to show me who that person was.
Oh my goodness, Cassie, I remember that night, Friday night, when we first started. Someone had told me that someone from Grace Chapel was coming, and I looked at the name and I didn't know your name. And then when I saw you come in with Jared out in the lobby, and then someone says, that's the woman from Grace Chapel. And I think I ran out and said hello to you and welcome.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. I was so excited to meet someone I didn't know at Grace Chapel. So that was exciting for me. And then life just went on Friday night and Saturday morning. And then I believe your mom came up to me later that day and asked me a question.
Well, it was so funny because as Cynthia was saying, she came out to the lobby and said hello to me, and just there was such joy and just spirit of love that was coming from you. And we just chatted briefly, and I instantly was like, I love this woman. And so Jared and I are heading back. My husband was getting me set. For those that don't know, I am in a wheelchair. Mainly am on home care here. So it was kind of a big deal that I was going out to a retreat and doing something, and we were waiting for my mom to get there. So Jared was dropping me off and getting me settled in the room. So Jared was bringing me back, and it was right after Cynthia and I had first met, and I looked at him, and I kind of, even though we were in our own room, I kind of whispered it because I think I was like so nervous to say it out loud, but I was like, I think she's the one. Like, I think she's going to be my mentor. And I was so excited. And so I hadn't said anything. And we had the session on Friday night, Friday morning. And in those sessions, literally, I kept seeing like, check, like she was just checking every single box, and I was like, there's no way this is real. So I told my mom about this, and then I chickened out. I decided that I was not going to say anything to Cynthia, and my mom, being the woman that she is, she made a joke, and she was like, oh, well, I'm just going to go bring Cynthia over here. And again, I'm in a wheelchair, so she kind of joked with me and was like, try and stop me, because there's no way I could catch up with her. And yeah, and that was the start of us meeting each other.
The woman comes up to me and says, Cassie would like to talk to you. Maybe, I think it was after the session that evening or something. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, folks, I was a wreck. I went through my notes. I was trying to figure out what I might have said that offended this lovely person. What did I say? How can I get out of this? I was absolutely a basket case. And then we met, and I was literally shaking. And you just came right out and said,
yeah, I just said, there was no reason in that point to just go around it. I was like, I would really like you to be my mentor. And I just said what I had been looking for and praying for. And I was like this. And I remember saying, I know you might think I'm crazy because I've literally just met you 24 hours ago, but I feel like you're the person that God led me to, and I would really love if you would be my mentor. And I was shaking at that point, because I was really just like, oh, maybe, like, is she going to think I'm crazy? Because I've known her for less than 24 hours. But God was clearly there in that conversation and with us. And yeah, we've been kind of doing this thing ever since.
We've been hanging out since then. But I remember first and foremost feeling so relieved. Like, maybe she does like me. And but then you said, and I don't even remember this, but I asked you a question. And what was that question?
Yeah, you right away asked me, what do you expect of a mentor? Mm-hmm. And I think this was really important for a couple of reasons. I didn't know fully what I wanted, but whenever you are looking for a mentor, the reality is that you do have some sort of an idea, even if it's an idea from a friend that you've seen that has a mentor, or you've read about mentorship, or maybe you've had a mentorship like thing in the past and it didn't go the way you wanted it to, or you're trying to replicate that. There are definitely going to be some thoughts you have about what you're looking for. And I was personally looking for somebody that I could meet with 1 to 2 times a month to share life with and to grow in becoming a leader in ministry. And it was really important to me that was someone from my church. But I know that, as you're thinking of a mentor, there are some people who view mentorship as you're kind of meeting once a week or other things. So it was really important that Cynthia had asked me that question, because if she didn't feel like she could fulfill those things, then I would need to kind of either say, okay, maybe I don't need that much, or say that is what I feel I really need right now.
And I think what you said, Cassie, is so important, so critical to the start of a mentoring relationship. The one who wants to be mentored really needs to know what they need. What are they looking for? Because I was on staff for 25 years at Grace Chapel as pastor of women, and I can't tell you the number of women who came to me and asked me, will you find me a mentor? And my response always was, well, who do you know? I don't know. You need to find someone for me. That just does not make for a good mentoring relationship. You have to feel comfortable with each other. You have to know what you're looking for, what your needs are. And you have to feel that you've got, you have somewhat of a plan. Now, if you had said, I would like for us to meet, every week and for at least 2 hours, and we'll read books and we'll do this, then I would have probably said, I can't do that, because the last thing I ever want to do is disappoint someone.
Mhm.
And I knew that that was certainly something that would guarantee failure. So when you gave that wonderful, open-ended, freedom-loving type of relationship, I felt really comfortable about it.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't have a plan.
Mhm.
It was just kind of get to know each other, a free-flowing conversation each time we got together. We talked about this before we filmed this, from the First Thessalonians 5, verse 8. I love this because I think this is really what mentoring is all about. We cared for you, and because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Cassie, when you and I meet, the times that I have driven out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because we live a distance from each other, but as I got closer to your house each time, I would get more and more excited, more and more enthused, because the intriguing thing about our relationship is you feed into me also. I've learned a lot from you, and for some strange reason, you seem to have learned a lot from me. But
Oh, yes.
but that's what it is about sharing our lives as well. Um, and we used to joke about this, we still do, that, I'm not sitting there, the mentor isn't sitting there, waxing eloquently about, all of the biblical knowledge I have, and so forth. It's just a free flowing sharing of our lives together. And that's what makes our relationship so beneficial to me, and I think to you.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note too that, you know, that mentorship, it is great that we can talk about very easy things. We can talk about things where um, we're sharing life together and whatnot, but you want to make sure your mentor is somebody that you can also talk to and say, I have a really hard question. I have something theologically that I'm struggling. I have something morally that I'm struggling with, or just any of those areas, and say, what is your take on this? How have you tackled this? And there are times that the questions that we're going to ask, whether I'm going to ask them or, someone else is going to talk to their mentor, it doesn't mean that you're going to get this perfect answer, but it's more of, how have you handled and just gone through with this in your own life? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And so, it's kind of also remembering, like, you don't want to go to a mentor and assume that, like, they're going to have the right answer to every single thing. That's part of what is amazing about a mentorship, is that you discover those answers and those questions with that person. And that has been a beautiful thing that we've shared.
I remember the time you stopped me when I said something. Do you remember? You were talking about,
I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
well, it was the time we were talking about, you had said something about joyful.
I
And I
asked you how I could be a more joyful wife.
and I said, I don't deal with joyful anymore. I deal with joy filled.
But mind you, she didn't add that joy-filled part yet. She just said, oh no, I don't do joyful. And I just was like, I didn't know what to do. I literally was like,
I got the wrong mentor.
no, that was not what I thought. I was just like, what does that even mean? Well, if you're not joyful, then what are you? But that has been like one of the greatest things that has come into our relationship, was you were talking about how I'm joy filled. I don't need to be full to have joy. I'm filled with his joy, and it's been life changing. So there are going to be things like that that are going to come, and they're so special. And to have that time together, and something that I think is really challenging our world, like you were saying, when you'd come here to visit, because we do live a ways away, and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a progressive chronic illness, and so I am pretty much at home all the time. I'm on home care at this point. So it wasn't something where I could go out and meet halfway to do coffee or any of those things. That wasn't something that my body would allow. So there were a few times that Cynthia graciously drove out here to my house and would visit me. But as we're thinking about the state of where our world is right now and quarantine and social distancing, you may be kind of wondering, well, should I put off trying to find a mentor in this time? And I would challenge you to not feel that way. So we have all joked lots of times that I like quarantine has been a dream for me because I was living that way anyways. Like I had no adjustment. Like I was already living the quarantine life here at home. But before all of this, most of our times together have been over FaceTime. And I do not feel like that has hindered our relationship in any way. I love when I can see you and physically give you a hug, but there is nothing lost on our relationship by doing things via FaceTime or Zoom and texting. Like, I don't feel like anything has been lost there. So if someone is feeling that way, I can tell you from personal experience that at least as a mentee, nothing has changed or been harder because we do things via FaceTime.
We were pretty good practice before the quarantine began. So, and I will interject here that Cassie has been a mentor to me in the technical part of it. So she's helped me a great deal in that regard because I'm not that good at it. So I appreciate that, Cassie. But it's been, I think, one of the biggest components in a relationship is that there is a comfort level, that there is a sense of relaxation. I just go back to the Thessalonians verse that we're sharing our lives. Cassie, in the purest of all senses, Cassie is learning and growing. I don't have all the answers, but I have the years, more years than she has. And so I can say, yeah, I've been through that, or I've experienced that, and I still don't have an answer for it. Or let me just tell you what I did or how I thought about it and things like that. So it's just sharing personal experiences, sharing personal questions. I admire you greatly, Cassie. I do admire your strength and your courage, and you fill me with joy. So I'm just so glad that you came out and said, would you be my mentor? And we have kind of, I don't know, should we say we've kind of made it up as we've gone along?
Yeah, I mean, to let people know when, because I didn't really give an answer of when you asked me what I expected. I didn't really share here what I had said, but I was very open-ended with it because the biggest thing about this is that something that I've learned is to embrace the blank lines. I'm a planner, so I love to have everything figured out months in advance and all of things. But something that's great about blank lines is that it gives room for God to grow and God to move. Because if you're so scheduled, you're not leaving as much room to say, God, guide my day, because it's already figured out. So that was kind of how I went about answering her question. Was, to be honest, I don't fully know. I was kind of like, I just know that you are the person that God has led me to, and I don't know what my life is going to necessarily look like and do. I was getting ready the following week to have surgery, so I knew that for me things were changing. You were going on sabbatical for a month, so we were just kind of like, all right, we'll just figure this out. And I had really said, like, maybe once or twice a month, can we meet up? Can we just talk? And that's kind of what we've done.
But you had done enough thinking and praying about it that you could even give that answer.
Yeah.
So it was something that you had, I believe in my heart, you had put it before the Lord, and you were willing to wait. Waiting is a hard thing, but you were willing to wait. And so when you felt that, yeah, this is the time, and she's the one, um, you were comfortable in saying, I don't know, once or twice a month. And that was sufficient for me to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, distance was not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And now technology has been the greatest blessing, I think, in our relationship, but also in anyone's relationship. I would challenge anyone, if you know someone, pray about it. If you want to ask someone, go for it, but don't let distance and don't let technology get in your way.
Well, and I think too, something like you were just saying about prayer that was so important. I knew, like, it was something that like I had been praying for years, very diligently, and I had met a couple people along the way that, you know, it crosses your mind, like, oh, are they going to be that person?
Mhm.
And I would chat with them or do something, but God didn't like I just knew like I could mentor with
Mhm.
this person. I'm sure it would work, but I didn't get that gut feeling that with the Lord leading of just saying, this is the person. So it's
Mhm.
okay if you want to meet up with someone and you want to get to know somebody and just see where God's going to lead, because I'm telling you that when you are there with that person that is the one that you have been praying for, that you have asked God so like deliberately and intently to help you find, you will know. Which is
Mhm.
why I didn't sit there and get to know Cynthia first and then say something. I mean, it was probably like the first question out of my mouth. And we ended up sitting in that hotel lobby talking for, I think, another like 45 minutes after and
Easily.
getting to know one another. But it wasn't something where I got to know her and then was like, I think this could work. I'll ask her. It was something that it was so specific. So it's okay if it takes meeting some different people, but
Mhm.
be very careful when you ask that question, because you want to know that you are working with the person that God has given. There are lots of great people. There are lots of amazing people, but I wanted to make sure I was working with the one that was actually meant for me by God to work with. So I just challenge you to get to know other people, but don't ask that question quickly unless the Lord is giving you that go ahead.
And I think that's really important. And I think another part of that is for the role of the mentor. For me, the timing was right. I didn't have to question, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I had retired. I had cared for my husband for 3 years, who had died 2 years earlier with Alzheimer's. I had written a book. It was signed, sealed, and delivered at the publisher. My work was done. So I had this sense of freedom. It wasn't, if I had been asked a year or 2 years before, I probably would have said no because it just wouldn't fit into
Mhm.
the kind of schedule I was keeping. But there was a sense of freedom. And I really believe that God works that way, that it worked for you. And just because it works for one doesn't mean it will work for the other, but it works for both of us.
Mhm.
And that's a God thing.
Yeah, and there are going to be people that you may reach out to and work with that whether they don't want to disappoint you, or maybe someone has said I would like to mentor you and it's come from the other way around. It doesn't mean that that's wrong and that you shouldn't give that a shot, but just be very intentional in your time of prayer and your time with the Lord to say, please make this known to me. Please make this known also to that person, because that was the other half of my prayer. It wasn't just, Lord, here are all the things. I spent 2 years praying for someone I didn't know yet. I did not know Cynthia, but I was praying over that mentor and I said, Lord, when it is that person, I pray that it would be the right time. I pray that their heart would be open to me and that you would lay it on their heart, because, you know, I didn't just want to pray over me. I knew that whoever this person was going to be was somebody that I would hopefully do life with for forever and that I would be able to love and support. So I wanted to make sure that in that as often as I was praying to find that person, that I was also praying for that person. So
Mm.
I just want to throw that in there that, you know, because this is someone that you're going to be close to, you're going to care about and love. And it is a special type of friendship and just relationship. So I would just really challenge you to, even if it takes 2, 3, 4 years, or maybe it only takes a couple months, make sure you're not just praying to find that person, but be praying for that person, that they are also ready to answer God's call in that. Because I believe that you answered a call from God too by saying yes to being willing to mentor me.
Thank you. And that's really important. Yeah. I marvel at the way God, and I believe it truly was God, put it all together. What are
Mhm.
some of the things do you recall that we've talked about in our just, I mean, we
We
haven't,
talked
we
about so
haven't,
many.
and we haven't said, okay, the month of April, this is what we're going to talk about. But I, what do you think?
So whenever I guess we start talking, it always kind of starts with us catching up, and kind of seeing what we've missed, what's been going on. We do text a bit, which is nice. So we kind of know if something big is going on, whether it's a prayer request. We do keep in contact via text. But I would say, for me at least, it kind of starts with whatever we're talking about. I tend to have questions about what I'm currently reading, or I have a thought from something that I was reading, and I want to kind of theologically check that, or say, here's what I'm feeling about this verse. Did you take it this way too? And so sometimes it's just like what's been on my heart of what I'm reading or what I'm doing. At times it can be those questions like, how do I be a more joyful wife? Like that was a longing in my heart of just saying, I know I would classify myself as a good wife. I would say I'm doing godly things, but I want to be more joyful. And so that was where that came from, was kind of me going, I don't know how to answer this question. I don't know how to do better. How do I improve in this way? So a lot of questions have been like that. And even ministry related, of just saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this, but like, I don't know how it's going to work. And I don't know what people might say or think. And that would where I would say the base of our questions and our time together isn't pre-planned, like you were saying. There are some times where I'll write something down as I have this question about XYZ, but a lot of it just comes from us talking and catching up. And I feel God is always very present in our conversations and in our time together. And it's very spirit led. And, you know, we are very similar people. That was something that I was so grateful that when I am stressed out, when I'm stressed out with that like type A mentality, you also have that type A mentality. And so it is nice to be able to talk to a more mature Christian who sees things a lot of the same ways that I do, and be able to say, how do I address this? How do I do these things? But yeah, if I know some people address mentorship differently, and they say, okay, this month we're going to focus on this, read these books, do these things. None of that's wrong. But I think what has been so great, and it gives grace for my body that doesn't like to follow schedules or do things the way that I want, just be able to say, all right, we're going to talk at this time. We're going to hope it works out. I'll text you if like something comes up, and we just kind of catch up. And every conversation I walk away going, I can't wait to implement XYZ into my marriage, or into this, into that. And it's not intentional, it just happens.
Well, and I think that's because of the way our relationship has evolved. We do share life. I think we have the quintessential Thessalonians
Mhm.
relationship. We share lives. I learn from you um, because you've been through a lot, and you've learned a lot about what you're going through. But you've learned from me because of my years of experience. So the questions you ask me have nothing to do with, technical stuff or geometry or things like that. The questions that you present, the things that you're dealing with or even struggling with, are things that I've worked through over my lifetime. And for me, it's a joy to share them. Years ago, I'll never forget. I don't know if I told you this, Cassie, but I was at a conference and we were all pastors of women, and every year we would make up our own agenda for the meeting for the weekend. And I was the moderator for the couple of years, and we would choose, the top 3 topics, and one of the topics always ended up as mentoring. And the challenge that mentoring was. And one of the women there said, I think that the biggest problem we have with mentoring is that we feel that the younger women don't value our stories and our experience. But we also feel deep down inside that our stories and our experience are not valuable. And therein lies the rub. So I just would love to say to people those of you who are listening, your stories and your life experiences are valuable. And we are told in Scripture, God delights when we pass on the truth to the next generation. And that truth isn't necessarily learning, 22 Bible verses a week. That truth is how we have put those verses into our lives, how we live out those verses. And then God says, share that with someone else. And so the responsibility then is for us to share with others or with one person, but someone else, the Cassie Nolans of this world, to say, I want to learn from you. Because what you did for me, Cassie, is you poured value into me by saying, I want you to be my mentor. I want to learn from your life. I want to learn things that you have lived through. That is the best thing that you can do for another person. So it's been great.
I think, as we're kind of summing up all these different things, I think that if you're looking for a mentor, be diligently praying for that person. Be praying that God would lead you to the right person, and that he would just make it known and clear to both of you in that time when you ask. And I think you'd be okay with me saying, if you're somebody that would like to mentor somebody else, to be praying in advance for that person and for that relationship, because I can pretty much guarantee you, and I talk to a lot of different people that are my age, and I get questions of, I really, really want to find a mentor. How did you do it? And I go immediately back to think of the reasons why you want a mentor. Look at the people that are currently, if you want to grow in your church, look for somebody in your church, because I guarantee there is somebody that wants to share their life with you. And so just as I am challenging people to be praying for their mentors and for God's wisdom and just to bring that person, I think it's also fair to say for mentors, be praying for that person that you are going to mentor, and that would come at the perfect time, because there are women looking to be mentored by you, and everyone loves to just be caught in that insecurity of, I don't want to ask, I don't want to say something, right? And I was grateful that I had a mom who decided to kind of get me into motion when I was about to chicken out. But it is true, like, it is a hard question, because it is a very vulnerable question to be asking someone. But if it's the right person, God is going to honor that, and he is going to bless your ability to be vulnerable and open with someone.
Mm-hmm. Prayer is the foundation. Base your search, if you want to call it a search, base your search on prayer, but pray expectantly, because this is a prayer that God delights in answering. And for the mentor, pray expectantly. And God will delight in bringing someone to you. I'm delighted that God brought Cassie to me. But then if you're the mentee, be bold. And I thank you, Cassie, for being bold, even though you scared me to death before we talked. But if you have been praying, and you've been praying expectantly, and you feel in your heart that this is the one that God has brought into your life, then start praying that that person would be open to the relationship.
Mhm.
And then ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you'll never know.
Yep. And it's exactly what you said, pray expectantly.
Yep.
And there were times over those 2 years where I was discouraged and just felt like I was not going to find somebody. And I am grateful that I had the accountability of I shared this with my close friend group and I said, this is something I'm praying towards. And I had that relationship to have them encourage me and say, don't stop praying. Don't stop praying.
Yeah,
It's going to
yeah.
happen. Bring other people into that prayer with you that you trust and you love, and you don't need to tell it to the world, but have a few close friends that know, or family members that know what's going on, and have them praying for your diligence to that prayer and to help remind you it's just not God's time yet. We see time and time again in scripture that we would love for things to happen immediately and prayers to be answered right away. But some of the things that God does best is when he waits, and he has us wait. And I believe that he used those 2 years to just bring me to the place that I'm at now, that I'm at my best to receive mentorship. And I'm sure during those 2 years, God said, you are not ready because of XYZ reasons. It doesn't mean I'm not going to give you a mentor. It just means you're not ready yet.
And that's a really important thing. It's funny, I was thinking the same thing. This is a prayer that God delights in. So you're praying for a mentor. He wants you to have a mentor. He wants you to be in relationship and growing in your life and in your spiritual life and every aspect of your life. So if you feel that there's this one person who is who you think should be your mentor and she can't, don't feel that God is closing the door and saying, nope, you're not getting any mentor. He's just saying, she's not the one. She's not the one that I've selected. Keep praying. I'm working it out. Because the goal in our life is to learn from one another. And God's greatest delight is to bring us together so we can learn from one another. So I love you, Cassie Nolan.
I love you too. And cannot imagine doing life without you. Why don't I have you close and just pray over this?
That's great. Would you join me in prayer? Father God, what a delight it is to just share with Cassie, who's become my dear, dear friend. Lord, I thank you for each woman, each person who's listening in on our conversation. I thank you that you have created us for relationships. I thank you that you delight when we develop relationships, when our relationships are geared toward growing into more and more likeness of you. And so, Lord, I thank you. I thank you that you've given us your word. You've challenged us in your word to grow deeper with you and deeper with each other. And Father, I pray for each person listening who may be praying for and has been praying for a long time to find that special mentor. I pray for each person who's been praying to bring someone they can mentor into their lives. I'm praying for the people who have just now thought about it and saying, yes, that's what I need. Lord, listen, hear, answer their prayers, I pray. Bring more relationships into being, more growth into being, and ultimately then more joy into those relationships. And that joy will delight you, and that'll delight us. So I thank you for this time. I thank you for the opportunity that Cassie and I have had, not only to share with so many today, but to share our lives with one another over this last year and a half or so. So I thank you, and I pray all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.